You can probably assume from the title of the video that I'm about to release an opinion that would be considered unpopular, at least by the general public. But before I start, I wanted to mention that I would never willfully want to put another creator's work of art down. It's important to know how much heart and soul is poured into putting a piece of work out there, especially an 80s love letter like Stranger Things. I respect and enjoy this show to bits and consider it one of my favorites, but that doesn't mean it's not flawed. Stranger Things Season 1 had many detractors, mostly for three main reasons: nostalgia pandering, looking at the 80s through rose-colored glasses, and frequent use of cliches. There are arguments that go either way for the first two, and having seen both sides of the arguments, I would say that it's a fairly even fight. But that third reason really bothers me. I would say that where Stranger Things excels is its use of reworking cliches, taking common television tropes and turning them on its head. My favorite example of this is the car chase scene. An obvious reference to E.T., the whole time I was smirking, going, "They're gonna fly over the car. That's cute." And then this happened. It's subversion like this that makes the show cathartic. In fact, I think that word describes Stranger Things very well. Cathartic. Like how the mean 1980s bully trope turns into extreme catharsis when Steve stops being a bully and ditches Tommy and Carol and saves the day with Jonathan and Nancy. Or how the crazy lady no one believes trope turns into literally the biggest catharsis you've ever felt in your entire life when Hopper tells Joyce he believes her. Stranger Things' gimmick, so to speak, is to take a common cliche and twist it just enough so that when the payoff comes, it feels better than when it usually does. It's unexpected. That was actually my favorite part about Season 1. It kept you on your toes all the time. Then Season 2 happened. And Season 2 wasn't bad by any means. It was a fun little romp through more or less of the same of what we experienced in Season 1. But that's the thing. It was more or less of the same. Actually, it was exactly the same. Like, exactly the same. Don't believe me? Let's recap. We cold open with a mysterious scene that will be revisited much later in the series. The actual story starts out with the four boys playing a game quintessential to the 80s. Will ends up by himself and something strange happens to him. The whole season ends up being about saving him. A mysterious girl shows up. The boys try to communicate with the girl in the most impractical way possible, leading to hijinks. This girl has an older male figure looking after her who from the start is set up as an antagonist but won't really come into contact with them as a threat until the end. One of the three boys that are not incapacitated gets mad at the fact that there's a girl in the group, but it's okay, they make up. Meanwhile, Nancy and Steve are dating, but then Nancy starts feeling bad because something happened, so Jonathan and Nancy team up and go on a wacky adventure so that Jonathan can save Will and Nancy can find out what happened to Barb. They end up in bed together. Meanwhile, Joyce tells everyone that she needs to save her boy. After like half the season, the skeptical person finds out that she was right and begins helping. They solve the puzzle through the power of arts and crafts and marking up the walls. I'm still surprised they pulled that off a second time. Meanwhile, Hopper, even though he experienced all this in Season 1, is a lazy police officer who refuses to take any of his civilians seriously until lo and behold, it turns out he was wrong. He and his two bumbling cops try to do things, but it turns out they need a lot more people. He does some investigation by himself and ends up way deeper into the heart of the mystery than he thought he would be. Meanwhile, Steve gets major character development throughout the series as he manages to fend off the people giving him attention purely for his reputation. He becomes a lot more likable by the end of the season than he was at the beginning. The spiked bat is his main weapon of choice. The girl's mean older male figure decides to confront her at the end, but someone she hasn't talked to very much all season fights him off for her. They fix this a little bit in Season 2. Meanwhile, the main antagonist that's not human is a monster with the word demo in front of it that only exists because a character did something extremely stupid, and you're wondering how did the writers think this was even close to a plot twist. All the characters come together for a small yet epic moment, and they eventually split off into small groups which consist of A, the laboratory, B, Joyce's house, and C, a third location where something sketchy happens. Fire ends up hurting the monster, but only 11 seals the deal. There is a small scene of the children regaining their innocence doing something they love. But wait! Don't forget about next season, the Duffer Brothers cry as this series ends on an ominous shot from something from the upside down. So yeah, the two seasons basically told the exact same story. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially for a show like Stranger Things. Why fix something that isn't broken? But in the world of TV, especially plot-driven TV, it's important to keep things moving forward, keep it fresh. Especially considering Stranger Things is the type of show that is partly based on making cliches fresh. Now maybe I'm giving Stranger Things too much credit. There's still a lot of things that are very wrong with Stranger Things, like how all the supporting characters from Season 1 just disappear, or how Max and Billy are walking stereotypes that seem to have completely avoided Stranger Things' magical character development, or how Mike literally contributes nothing to the show in Season 2 except mope about Eleven, which some people have justified, or how Bob, whose cliche is being a dork, literally saves the day just by being a dork, avoiding any further development, or how Eleven went from a cavalcade of mysteries to an excuse to sell Halloween costumes, or how Eleven went from a psychic warrior who uses her powers to help her friends to a petty girl that occasionally gets angry because Mike has other friends, or how Eleven really shined last season in an ensemble cast, and instead they separated her for an entire season to discover herself, and how does she know where the bus is, and where did she get the money, and most of it was Eleven. They really messed up Eleven for me. And I'd complain about episode 7, but everyone already has. Go find somebody else to explain why it's bad. But spoiler alert, it is. The main problem with Stranger Things 2 is the word the Duffer Brothers used in their interview. Bigger. Stranger Things 2 is definitely bigger, but without refining its great features, and actually negating some of its Season 1 glory in the process. Take the Demogorgon and Demodogs for example. Season 1 was built around a single Demogorgon that we had seen was a powerhouse. It killed many people, the suspense around its reveal was intense, and it was difficult to kill. Then in Season 2 we got introduced to Demodogs, which according to the wiki are actually just like baby Demogorgons or something. And there's just so many of them, and I guess they're kind of intimidating at first, but between the fact that Dustin bonded with one of them, and they're taken down so easily compared to the original Demogorgon, it just feels almost offensive. Like, in the first season, to take down just one Demogorgon, Eleven had to literally sacrifice herself to the Upside Down, and now Eleven can throw these things around, and Hopper can shoot them, it's raining Demogorgons, there's no threat, they weren't scary, I'm sorry, they weren't scary! And when they spent the whole first season running away from one Demogorgon, it kind of feels like they negated any original threat it had. Why couldn't this one be shot? Is it not the same thing? I don't get it. What are the rules? And what about the mystery of the Upside Down? In the first season, there was one main gate that let the Demogorgon out, and little temporary gates that opened for some reason. Eleven could only connect to the Upside Down using the sensory deprivation tank, and the main method of communication was through electricity or light or something. Eleven closes the main gate. Voila! All in all, a neat little mysterious world that I would have liked to see expanded upon. In Season 2, Eleven walks out of some random gate which I thought she had closed. She blindfolds herself as a form of sensory deprivation, and I mean, she's developed, but how did she learn this? The Upside Down just appears to Will, which is cool, but why only him? He wasn't the only one in the Upside Down. Also, the Upside Down is growing into the real world now, like, into its plants. I thought it was an alternate dimension. Why is it acting like a thing and not a place? And what about that final shot? What does it mean? Is it the Upside Down growing into the school? Or is it just a shot telling us that the Upside Down is still there? Or is it a way of telling us that the Mind Flayer still has a connection to Will? Is there still an opening somewhere, like last time when we thought Eleven had closed it but she really didn't because they needed a way for Eleven to get back for Season 2? What are the rules? It's not mysterious anymore, it's just frustrating. Now, that doesn't mean bigger TV is bad. Most good TV is based on the literal concept of getting bigger. Take Breaking Bad, one of the most well-put-together shows of the generation. Season 1 ended in a small standoff with a drug dealer beating his lackey to unconsciousness. Season 2 ended with 2 planes colliding in the sky resulting in 167 deaths. There was a different sense of scope, a different scale of importance. He wasn't just paying for cancer treatment, he was in it now. Choices got more important as the stakes got higher, and the show paid off for it. Stranger Things doesn't have that. The stakes are higher, but the choices are the same. There's no payoff. And maybe I'm reading into this too much. Maybe comparing Stranger Things to Breaking Bad is unfair. But it's hard not to see the overwhelming amount of potential this show, cast, and writers have, and what a shame it is that Stranger Things 2 seem to give in a lot to fan service rather than writing their own stories. Like, ask yourself if the Barb storyline would have even existed if Justice for Barb hadn't trended. The Justice storyline wraps up in about 30 seconds in the last episode and you never see Barb's parents again, making most of it seem like a backdrop just for Jonathan and Nancy to get together, which would have played out much differently if Barb hadn't even trended. Honestly, there was just no reason for it. It's probably not entirely fair to just point out the things Season 2 did wrong. It really had a lot of development and characterization that other shows just can't seem to grasp. The expansion of the lore established in the first season at least attempted to be interesting. And what about the way Will got major screen time, huh? I mean, wow, can he act? And to be honest, all these things on their own make Stranger Things a great show. But without the originality the narrative of Season 1 had, it doesn't feel as great. From what I hear, there are big things in store for Season 3. From the Upside Down, to 8, to the other experiment children, to everything else happening in the background, I'm sure Season 3 will have a much more expansive story than the previous season did. And if not, we can at least make some jokes. Maybe they'll have demo roaches this time.